it went on and on.
I'm hungry.
Mom, I'm hungry.
Where could they turn?
Over here! It's my microwave snack case! And brownies! How many special effects!
Yes, fresh baked snack cakes in 4.5 minutes.
Down the drain, and in the second part, you go into the bottle. What we did here, this was the first time that we took our image processing animations and texture mapped them on 3D objects. So it's not a big deal in 3D animation to have moving texture maps, but this is the first time that we had sort of orchestrated our 2D processing animations with them. So these are some tests of getting down into the bottle, and it's like a really early test of the bottle. Now, there was this the first part of the Open involved this full frame image manipulation where this was the first time we'd ever done this, and we were trying to develop a kind of character animation style that we could do full frame image manipulation with, where you could have like sort of anticipations and follow through and things like that. And Colossal Footage gave us this, Colossal Pictures gave us this test footage of Bobby McFerrin. It has really been put through the ringer. A little out of control again, I don't know, a couple of problems. It was tricky with this stuff to sort of learn to control it. That's always the problem. So in each episode, you'd start out, you wouldn't know that the show was beginning. That was the idea. So you'd be watching some video. All of a sudden, it would start to deform. It would get swirled up into a ball, swirl down the funnel, and go into the bottle. So here we're a little bit further along, getting closer to the end. We're sort of fudging the transition at this point, telling them, don't worry, it'll look great. Bottle's a little too active here, a little too nervous looking. We tried this happy bottle. We didn't go for that. This is what the animation, this wasn't the final, but this was an animation that was in the last test that was actually inside the bottle. So in the show itself, there was one show that opened with this 50s dental hygiene tape, and then got swirled down the drain. And another tape. This everyone loved seeing this one get swirled down the drain. And then something that is really our favorite.
Rocky Mountain High. Rocky Mountain High. I'll see you guys at the left. Boy, that was great! Hi, folks, I'm John Denver. And this, well, this, of course, is Colorado. You know, the emotions I feel up here I've expressed many times in music and song, but you can't always carry a guitar. That's why I bring one of these. For me, pictures are a kind of visual music. Colorado.
She would lip sync to pre-recorded text.
Where's it going? Dangerous puppet!
Six-figure theater.
Urban
Folklore.
This is liquid television.
You are now about to witness the strength of
Dion Lux.
This is liquid television.
I know you're gonna dig this.
Here we also did the close for the show, and the idea for the close was that we would have thousands and thousands of little TVs swarming around like they're bubbles in some kind of liquid. And this was the first use of a process we did. Again, it's a particle system, but instead of a little paintbrush or something like that, we say, okay, plop down a little animation right there. Put down a little a little pre-recorded sort of 3D animation. And then we also made mats for them so that we could key through stuff. And here's here's the TV that we finally developed. There's a 3D animation with a little bit of dynamics on it. Got pasted down all over the place. And then here's the mat for it. You see, the ones further back are all kind of fuzzed out a little bit. And we also made this big floppy TV that they would bring the main, a picture that went with the main credit. We also did these bumpers that they would show before and after commercials. They would show parts of it. This is not what the final bumper looked like. This was a 2D, non-working version of the final bumper. It's got the nervous bottle, the non-animating liquid, but it has a certain quality that I like. But here's what the final looked like. It's full 3D state. And then we've got these 2D animations on everything we can possibly stick them on. You know, they're in the bottle, they're on the surface, they're in the background, they're down in here in the water, they're all over the place. The bottle is several layers of 3D, and then occasionally there's a little 3D TV that jumps up out of there. Thanks. We did some holiday station IDs for Thames TV in London, and these were again just some very complicated 3D processes, but they started with just a still image. So they sent us these photographs, and at first they were just like Polaroids, and then they finally sent us some real photographs that we could use. Are a lot smarter, and we wanted to create a hand-painted claymation look from a 3D computer graphic render of this heat pump, which we like to call Monet's heat pump. And so we also did some really elaborate brush transformations from shot to shot. So we started with a 3D render of the whole spot and applied this process to it, and here's the final spot with its jam and soundtrack.
The warmth of the earth. Even on the coldest days, there's heat in the air. A heat pump captures that heat, so it's 2 to 3 times more efficient than a typical furnace. In the summer, a heat pump becomes a high-efficiency air conditioner. Use the natural warmth of the earth.
Giving and taking, the earth spinning around in a circle of warmth.
Choice, lesson, choice, lesson.
What's that for? Devil in your head.
It's so sticky that you could sort of infer the surfaces it was on by its behavior. And so what we started doing is we took this picture of the baby, and the idea was there wouldn't be anything, just white, the baby in the tire, the shadow. So we took this picture just to rough the animation out, and we stuck it on a grid in 3D, put in a fake, a real quick and dirty shadow, and like started moving it around, see what sort of things we could make the baby do. And then we worked out this little animation. Here's all the stuff that the baby's going to do eventually. It's going to zip around, do a couple different things. So this was all edited together to get the timing of this. What we did was we sent this footage to Apogee, and they shot live-action babies doing what a baby in that tire might be doing at that time. They built up this little rig. And here's the little babies.
Yeah.
There you go. This is the demo derby version here. Okay. So then, from all of that, they picked out shots that seemed to work with the animation. And these all got timed together, and this is what they sent back to us and said, okay, here are the shots. Here's how they fit in. You guys fit them in. So what we did was, of course, the first thing is we took the shots of the babies, we keyed them out, and we just stuck them right on the grid to see what it looked like. And you see the first version of this. And this is, what we got was exactly what we knew we would get all along, which is very stiff looking animation. So here's all the stiff animations. So what we started to do after this was apply deformations to the grid as the baby was flying around. The idea is that we wanted to make the whole thing kind of cartoony, but not too cartoony because nobody would want to buy a cartoon tire. So we started to apply these image deformations, which again took a little while to control. Had a couple problems. Nope, that's not quite right. That's not quite right. Things are not always perfect the first time around. But I'm just going to pause this for a second while I explain the next thing.
It's not just a high-performance tire. It's a Michelin. So it does things ordinary tires just can't do. The XVD series from Michelin. Because so much is riding on your tires.
For Dolby Labs, when they recently released their digital sound system, and Dolby had this idea that they wanted to see a train, and because the train was capable of producing such loud and unusual sound. And the whole thing about this, a big part of it was the sound, because I don't know if you've heard it, but their digital sound stuff is really pretty incredible. They've got like 6-channel digital with a subsonic track mixed in. So it's pretty amazing stuff. And so what the idea here was that the imagery would be very vague. So of course, great for us. That's what we like. So, so the idea was that you would hear the sound. The sound would tell you as much about what was going on as the imagery would. So there would be a train. It would sort of come out of this fog. It would be rendered in a kind of, the idea was to render it in a kind of Pointillistic style, and then have it sort of dissolve back into the fog again. We got a train, it disappears. Do you think that'll work? And they said, yeah. So we got a better train. We did a mix between sort of a solidly rendered train and more of a ghost transparent type train with an airplane flying overhead. And then we started to develop these kind of, again, a kind of revelation technique. And again, here we've got, these are some early tests. They're a little more, they look a little more rendered, the way the clouds and the fog look. And working with these, again, these brushes that are, they're taking information from the image that's passing underneath them. They're sort of flowing over the form of the train. And then we've developed the fog cloud software quite a bit. That's also a 2D paint process. All these little specks, there's really, really tiny little white specks, and those are actually a 3D particle system. see all this really interesting kind of satin stuff. It's exactly the same stuff.
In building some products, video that you have, and add titles to it, and fly them around. So I'm bringing in a still image here to show you, and it's one that we made at Xaos. And then you can type in what you need to type, or read it into the text file. And you've got the kind of graphical, typographical control that you expect. And then we have these three editors up here that you can see that allow you to control the look of the text. So right now this is telling me that I've got a white fill in these letters and no outline and no drop shadow. So I'm going to quickly change the fill here. Got really good color tools. Okay, so there's some new colors. I'm going to make a quick outline, and we can make that a little thicker here. I'm going to bevel it, which you can probably barely see. We'll see it in a second. And make a quick drop shadow as well. That's the transparency there. Okay. So you can really rapidly work up some, I'm going to fine-tune the kerning here. Work up some pretty good-looking text. And I'll do a snapshot and render one frame, although I don't know if on this screen you'll be able to see much difference between the snapshot and the preview. You have to trust me, it looks a lot better. Come around and check it out. So I'm going to show you some of the other text effects you can do. Now, up to now, it's been pretty ordinary, except the beveling, which is cool. I've been able to add a gradient to some text and get it on the screen quickly. There's some other things you can do, like use an image for a fill instead of this color gradient. So I've got a picture of elephants here that I can drop in there. And in the preview, we just see kind of smeared color. Let me pick a new font that will show this a little better. But when I render this, we'll be able to see the elephants walking along this text. So a lot of these things, when I was first coming to Xaos, text was really a problem. Most animations call for some kind of text, and it's usually very poorly handled in most animation software. So we developed a system to really specifically take care of that problem. And this is the machine rendering. Rendering something you heard a lot of people talk about. How long does it take to render a frame? They were talking about these 20-minute render times and stuff. That's still true, but frequently, you can see things happening a lot quicker. This machine's got, I think, 24.
What computer is this?
That's a good question. I should have said that. This is Silicon Graphics Iris Indigo. And there, anyway, you can see my elephants kind of marching along. Okay, well, what's going to be more interesting here is the animation. So let's look at that. Let's get back to one font. Create some nice looking text, but apart from that, it's also nice to be able to animate this really easily. And To do it in this package, you just have to place your text where you want it to be and say set, and you can move it out into the future here and move it around again and rotate it, or you can scale it. Say set again and preview the motion. And so you're getting a pretty good, quick preview of what your animation is going to look like. Now I've only got one block here, but you can have as many blocks as you want flying around, of course. Where it's going to be shipping in December, so you're all getting kind of a sneak preview of it here. It doesn't have its total final look at all, but I can give you a pretty good idea of what it's going to be able to do. What we've done in Pandemonium is, I'm sure you can't see these guys, but under this effect menu, we've collected all the effects. Now, each effect is like a separate little program that's written by one of the Xaos artists. And some of them are fancy things like brushing, there's brush dissolve that I'll show you. You know, a lot of the paint effects and warping effects that Ken showed during his talk. And some of them are very straightforward things like chroma keying, color correction, filtering, things that aren't really fancy and that you don't notice when you're watching production, but without which the production couldn't have been built at all. And we call those the utilities, so it's like effects package in the utilities package. Another thing to remember about Pandemonium is that these effects are separate files. They're not compiled in. It's very easy for us to send out upgrades. It's like, for you Photoshop users, it's like, you know, you can get Photoshop and then get more plug-in filters. Pandemonium works like that, except that the plugins are generally a lot fancier and more complicated. When I pick it, I get this little segment tool that lets me choose the imagery that I want to work with. And I'm going to pick a picture of a sunset that I have down here. Okay. And I'll do the animation for 10 frames just to see how quick it is. And I'm going to leave all the parameters at their default values. So, if you can read in here.
Are you going to release this on a PC?
Yeah, we are. We'll talk about that. Now, I mentioned to you that one of the difficult things in doing computer animation is that you typically have to wait a long time for tests. We've worked really hard on building a system that gives you the fastest, most accurate preview possible. So you see the frames as they're generated. You might see right away that something's wrong, and you can just stop it, you know, and start over. You can also stop it at any time and play back what you've got real time, so you can see if the motion is correct. And we're working at a quarter res. Turns out that there are some problems in computer graphics when you're normally working at one resolution and you shrink down to a smaller size. You don't always get the exact same thing that you would have had when it was large, so we spent a lot of time making sure that all our software does that properly. Now you can see the ripple. So that's an example of, you know, something very simple. I've just taken the still frame as input. I brought up the effect. I didn't adjust any controls or anything. I just basically picked an image and said preview. Set it for 10 frames. Now I've got it. You kind of see that now. So they can make So you can see that we can produce something like this pretty rapidly. I showed you a little test of it, and here's something that I can produce. I'll show a couple of other things. One, here's how it goes. Seems like these things just naturally happen in San Francisco. It's going backwards. Yeah.
In your warp over transition, what does the program pay attention to?
What's it actually doing?
Yeah.
Okay, let me bring it back up. camera, we chroma key in this swirling thing underneath, and we flash the text over it, swirl it back, and then bring in this text with a little ripple. So I did this, Pandemonium's brand new, it's not shipping, and I kind of wanted to see what it would be like to try to actually do sort of a fake production with it. So I just cranked this out last Sunday.
When will the Mac and PC versions be available?
Wow, I thought someone might ask that question. I had a feeling. We're currently, finally I can talk about this, we're now doing ports to both the Mac and the PC. The scheduled dates are next summer, so say, August next year, but I'm kind of anticipate some slips there, but I think definitely in fall of next year we'll be coming up.
Let's face it, we're probably all image junkies. And we probably all have some sort of relationship to image making that has both a lot of excitement and a lot of disappointment connected to it. I moved to California about 1.5 years ago from New York City, and one thing that I found in California, which you probably have seen throughout the day, is that this is a place where people really appreciate new ideas. You don't get in line and wait for things. You don't become just another number in a list of directors or producers or artists. You get the chance to make things yourself. You get the chance to create things and create a genre around yourself that includes you and maybe some of your friends. I used to make a joke very late at night in editing studios that I would never let technology dictate my aesthetic. It's not a really great joke, but of course it was wrong. We're always looking to tools and different kinds of technological innovations to help us, to either allow us to say what we want to say, get it done faster or cheaper, or more fully realize something we're interested in.
Sucks without it, but so slick and telling us what to do. Our friend the brain is the most important part of our bodies. Why, without your brain, you'd be a slobbering idiot, having yourself in gruel. leads us to think that the connection between the right brain and the left brain are what permit the subtle blending of organization and imagination which allow the fusion of science and technology to be fruitful. It's the right brain that spurs on the creative urge, and the left brain which remembers where your keys are. The right brain understands color, form, and the abstract meanderings of design. The left brain pays bills. The right brain appreciates beauty, music, the meaning of art. The left brain follows cookbook instructions. The right brain is beautiful. The left brain is boring. The right brain is interesting. The left brain is tasks. Why even bother with the left brain if it's either going to bring you misery and work and drudgery, and your friends will think you're a nerd, and your wife leaves you for a ballet dancer and leaving you just completely alone with your beakers and test tubes and friendless and just heating up leftovers? I mean, why even think about the left brain? It's not going to bring you a Nobel Prize after years of hard work. Not that that would bring your back sobbing and begging forgiveness. Why not just pick up a scalpel and carve it up?
Voila! Sweetbreads all around, simple and creative. But filling as hell for 4 to 6 people. Join me, the French chef, next week for another recipe. Like a red prairie oyster. Until then, goodbye and bon appetit.
All right. What is it? It is. It's what it is what it is.
I paid that bill. The bill and I'm coming back later this afternoon, and I didn't know if I
character, you know, kind of swings his hips a lot and his shoulders are kind of stiff. And here we are from the side. And actually it makes a big difference if you wash the shoes or not, of course, so we did it both ways. And again, here is an example. Actually, these are very early in purpose. These are some of our very first examples, but this is our basic skeleton of Robert Patrick walking. You can sort of see it as a character of him. In fact, we had an example where we actually filmed this out and intercut the pieces of film to alternate. And it was amazing. Amazing accurate. So again, this is just an example of how we got the basic character of his walk. We did the same thing with him running. And we had the same thing, 15 seconds per scan. And this camera projects a line of light, a red laser, onto his face. Then you can sort of see it in one of these frames. So you see that beam of light. And it's basically digitizing his face kind of like slices in an orange, you know, one after the other. And then the computer connects them all together. And that's the idea. And it's really quite accurate. It's definitely accurate enough to get the feeling and character of the subject's face. Again, one of the problems here is that it doesn't happen in real time, so you can't digitize an accurate performance. I had a lot of fun doing this. Actually, he's a very intense guy. When we had him running with the grids on his body with bare feet. He didn't tell us, but his feet began to bleed. And finally, we saw his blood on the rubber mat. So he also has a cup where this is okay. These are just some of the keyframes strung together without any animation in between. It's straight data. So you can sort of see it basically does achieve the feed. You can basically see what he's saying. You can squint and sort of squeeze your eyes a little bit. Sort of things. But it's definitely Robert. One of the problems with this kind of technology is it can't really scan. It's a cylindrical scanner, so you can't scan complex things like bodies with arms or concave things that shadow each other. So anyway, so here is the beginning of our sculpting. Now this is what this particular model is an early example of again what I would call the Silver Surfer stage of his evolution. So I just have a few examples of this here. So again, this is all just hand sculpted from photographs, and we actually did detailed maquettes at this point. And here we have Robert's digitized head added to the body. And in fact, I think in this particular version, in the level 3, it's low resolution than the actual scan data. Just exclusively silicon graphics. We use Max for paint work. You know. And then here it is just being created over a still. Now, he actually got singed in this shot. It was really, really hot. Of course, he has the eyes of steel because he's in character. And now we have, this is the clean plate. You can see all the stuff. Another big thing to realize too is when you're doing this sort of, again, this photoreal mixture of live action and computer animation, these are these targets I was telling you about. I don't know why this burns so slow. But a really, and here we have our first basic example of putting our stage 2 guy in the set. And here are some of these environmental stills I was talking about. So they're reproducing very poorly here. But this is what's behind him. This is like to his right. This is in front of him. This is both straight down to his left. Okay, now here we have one of our first examples of him walking out of the flames. So this is, again, this is just our computer actor, and you can see how well he's registered because his feet aren't sliding that much. So he's basically, the computer camera's matching the real camera, otherwise our character would be sliding. Beginning to be a little bit of effort on that. You can sort of see some flames reflecting in him. So now you can see the flames in the sky. And now he's doing his basic transfer film, because we just didn't have any free computers, and that film was input scan. So here we have a morph of the silver, so its edge matches exactly with Robert Patrick. And then here we have the final shot. You have to see the shadow on the ground. It's, you know, this, again, I was mentioning earlier, we work primarily in film. This isn't reproduced very well here, unfortunately. This is a very early one. Taking Robert's head, cyberware scan, splitting it apart and healing it back together. Here's an example of someone playing with making a chrome splash. We call this the splash head. And here's the actual plate. So you'll see the camera stays still, and he's moving his eyes as if his head were split apart, and then when he turns his head down, his head is healed back again, and he walks out of frame. And what we're going to do to this is we're going to, now what we did is, the camera was still again, so this is a very simple shot. So first we shot here's an early test. Now you can see things like lining up the chrome to the edges of the head, and all these kind of problems occur. There's a chrome claw in there. And now another thing is that we can only distort the body, but not the arm and the hand, because the arm and the hand are already healed.
Curated, and they actually collected about 20 of the old synthesizers. They found a buchla somewhere and screen, and to treat the video screen as if it were a loom, and create a set of numbers that represented threads in this loom, and then weave them and see what they looked like. And believe me, I had absolutely no idea what they were seeing of colors, and quite a difference from today's ultra high-speed, high-resolution DSP image processing chips. But I had a contest in 1973 with Stan Vanderbeek, who was an experimental filmmaker at the time, who was working at Bell Lab, to have a race to see how fast their computer could generate patterns like my Video Weaver could in real time, and it couldn't. And they had this huge, multi-million-dollar computer, and it could generate maybe one frame of image every 10 minutes. So there was a lot of fun in kind of playing games like that. Of course, in the end, they eclipsed me completely with technology like this. But the video weaving program material was very popular at its time, and it was one of the first digital video effects or image systems to have been put together before there really was much available in the way of digital computers or digital imaging chips. Creation of the instrument itself, and then proof on top of that. Weaving patterns, and I learned a lot of things in studying this, that metaphor connection between our current raster of scanned horizontal and vertical picture elements called pixels, and the warps and wefts of many cultures that have woven for millennia. And for example, I learned that for most of the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th centuries, this is Bubblehead, a piece by an artist from Philadelphia. So there's this huge city square, the center of the city of Nagoya, and there's an art museum and a science museum and a stadium and a field, and they had decked it all out with light shows, and it was really quite festive and lovely, and the theme and the common element was high-tech art. Not just video or computer graphics, though those certainly figured in, but... So this is a close-up of one of the pieces in the atmosphere work. And you can hear children and people. There were people wandering through the galleries looking at the piece. So it was very much of the moment.
Scale.
What do you think? The question is, what's the scale? What do you think it is? Guesses? 2 feet? 5 feet? These monitors are 7-inch monitors that you're looking at there. The sphere that you just saw in the previous scene was about 12 inches in diameter. This is the third piece. There are actually 4 sections to the total piece. We're going on looking at them. The first one was a Gaia feminine-oriented. The third one, this one, is also a Gaia feminine-oriented. And the other 2 were masculine-oriented in terms of their form and structure. They were all inspired by some Shinto temples that I visited with my girlfriend in Kyoto the year before, and saw for the first time, firsthand, the incredible use of these natural materials. And it occurred to me, I guess, you know, East meets West and all, hey, I'll stick some video in there and play around with it. And for example, I thought maybe I could sort of make you think there's a stream of water flowing under these pebbles, you know, and put some water imagery under there. Or if I put some fire imagery under there, maybe you'll think there's a fire going on. And indeed, the illusion is quite powerful. So the whole piece is about hiding video and using video as light, and altering your whole concept of video. This video is something you have to sit up and look at straight in the face, with the bottom flat and the top vertical, the top horizontal. And also about juxtaposing those various materials, crystalline and silicon. construction of the piece took place in 5 days, and I'll show you a little bit of that just because, you know, people like to see the making of kind of stuff. And then if there's time, there's some amazing work by young Japanese artists that I was fortunate enough to be able to record while I was touring the rest of the Arctic show. And, you know, if there's time and we don't run out, we can come back to this and look at a little bit of that. Went around Nagoya and found some local woodworking craftsmen who fabricated these altars, as I call them. There were 2 circular cylindrical altars and a large square altar. The cylindrical altar is about 1.5 meters in diameter. And so we were building. Now I had thought ahead of time to ask to have some art students as apprentices to help me out. And that worked out great because I had 6 students, except they didn't speak English. But we managed to communicate anyway, and by the 3rd day we were getting along just famously. And they really helped me put this thing together real quick because there was only like 4 days to do it. It was kind of nice because normally video art doesn't smell much, you know, and this smelled like real art. There was wood and sawdust and lots of paint and shellac, so it was kind of fun to have a... And you could sit on this thing and sort of ride down the road. It was like some glorified children's fantasy that this sponsoring company, Maytech, had actually spent $2.5 million developing this for us in the last 3 years. And the engineer who was in charge of the project, we got together and he was very proud of it. Now here's a little later in the process of putting the atmosphere piece together is the pouring in of the materials. Now this really shocked them when I was doing this. They were first of all shocked by putting the monitors in upside down. They thought they were going to break or burn out. In fact, I found out later they were making side bets that my piece would last 2 days. Then they took me all around Nagoya to various sites to pick up sand and stones and pebbles and rice, and then salt, rock salt, or so I thought. And here we are building up the crystalline material for this part of the piece. Oh, what's he doing? It's like, and it wasn't even dirty. I mean, it's not like I was putting manure or something on it. You know, I've done that in other pieces. This is clean stuff. So I guess I was sort of, you know, hey, shocking them a little bit. Though they certainly have shocked me in ways that I couldn't begin to show here. But I mean, if you really want to see some, well, we don't have VHS, unfortunately. The most shocking stuff. The main challenge in this was the load of the pebbles. Because by it was done, I underestimated the need for pebbles by about 1 to 10. And there were almost a ton of pebbles on here. And then they kept thinking, oh, it's going to break. But I've seen engineers and props and everything. It never did break. In fact, fascinated by the imagery. And then they contacted me about publishing the imagery as a separate product. And so now I've got this album called The Atmosphere's Piece. And I guess I'd like to maybe show about 5 or 6 minutes of that, and then come back and talk a little bit more and talk about questions. This piece, at this point, is in Japan, and is possibly going to travel to Taiwan with an Artec tour that's going there. And then in Artec 93, I'll find out if they invite me back. I've got some other ideas of working with water, fountains, and combining video in that way. Hopefully I'll be able to implement them. But talking to the Japanese artists...
What girl was that?
The Japanese artists are always struggling like Americans to find backing and find patrons, and it's just as hard there. You're talking to them. They think we have it easy in America. You know, you can get grants and you can get sponsors, but many of them leave Japan and go to New York to try and tap into the art world kind of energies that exist there. And in going over to Japan, it's very interesting to have these, have had the opportunity to work with these students. I got pretty friendly with them, and their families started inviting me to their homes and out for dinner and getting to see how they lived. And so I don't know, I have to edit all this into some kind of travelogue at some point, because there's lots of other shocking things that I've got on tape. But what I'd like to do now is maybe fade out the lights and fade up the audio and